Welcome to Spinning Back Clique, where each week here at MMA Junkie we take a spin through the biggest stories in MMA. And on today's episode, Alexandre Pantoja now has 3 title defenses. But now what? Shavkat Rakhmonov stays undefeated, and Machado, Garry's must have went. And finally, did a Russian get robbed by a Frenchman over at the T-Mobile? Let's discuss. Hello, everyone. Gorgeous George here on the con, and look at the distinguished panel we have for you today. It's Goes from MMA Junkie Radio, and he's the SVC creator. He's in Las Vegas. Matt Wells, one of our talented editors from the editorial team, he stops in. He's in Dallas, Texas. Nolan King was in Las Vegas. Now he's in Boston. He's one of our talented reporters. Give him a pass there. He's working off little sleep. And Cold Coffee, he's going to be on the 1s and 2s. Let's get going, guys. In the main event at UFC 310 this past weekend, Alexandre Pantoja defeated Kaya Sakura to claim his 3rd title defense. Very impressive outing for the Brazilian, who was on the verge of clearing out his division. Let's hear it, boys. What was your reaction to this championship fight? And Nolan, again, you were there cage side. We appreciate you flying to Boston and doing this with us. Go, man. What was your reaction?
Yeah, I think it was a big moment for him in his career, right? We've seen him a couple times. This was his 2nd pay-per-view headliner, but I feel like he really seized the moment. This was a fight that people were intrigued by because of Asakura, because it was a champion versus champion sort of fight that we don't usually get to see in MMA. So I think he really did a good job of not only performing. I mean, that was just a pretty much one-sided, one-way traffic sort of fight, but also with his call out, with the way he carried himself after the fight, he seems like he's really settling into the championship role. And in return, I think people are really starting to respect him. I think I saw more buzz online about him after this fight by a long shot compared to some of the other post-fight reactions that we've seen from him. So good on him. Dominant fight. Good, good intriguing call out that got people talking. I don't know how realistic it is that it'll ever happen. I know Demetrius is not sounding like that's something he wants to do, but UFC 310 was Pantoja's moment. He really seized it, and I think people, for the first time, are kind of interested in to really think about and discuss the different options that he could take next for his next fight.
Yeah, and boy, are those flyweights fast. Goes the way they were mixing it up, man. I mean, it was really high pace, whether they were striking or grappling. It all just moved so quickly. I think even flyweight in general took another step.
Yeah, I mean, I really enjoyed it. I thought that was kind of Pantoja's 10 performance. I think it's one that really helps him take the next step, not just amongst his peers, but with the fans. That guy, the performance itself, like with going in, we didn't really know with Asakura. Like we had an idea of what we were going to get, but we weren't 100% sure because of all the intangibles, right? Like literally fighting in a cage, in a different country. There's so many new things, different rule sets for this guy. I actually had fun watching him fight Pantoja, and I feel like Asakura against any other flyweight that night probably would have done some pretty good damage. But Pantoja was just so smart the whole night. His fight IQ, he was always one step ahead. He had this calmness that only some of the best champions we've seen have in that cage. I was so impressed by his fight IQ. It was a fun night, man. I thought that guy had a 10 performance.
Flyweights haven't been getting the respect. Hopefully it starts now. Guys, in boxing, that's where Floyd, Pacquiao, Julio Cesar Chavez, a lot of these athletes that finished as welterweights and super welter, they all started off at lightweight, in that range in boxing. Matt, what were your thoughts, man? This thing unfolded really nice, this fight between the Brazilian and the Japanese fighter.
Yeah, I mean, you couldn't ask for much more, right? It was an exciting fight. The newcomer to the UFC came in and really he put it out like all on the line. Really, he really went for it, like straight from the gate, coming out with jumping knees, jumping counter knees, like he was trying to create a highlight. And that was one of the things that I tweeted out like after the first round. I was like, he's trying very hard to create a highlight here, and he's probably going to end up on the wrong end of one. And that's exactly what happened. But you have to appreciate the fact that he really went out there and tried to make it happen. And for Pantoja, he just really proved how good he is, right? And he talked about it during his post-fight interview. He said, there's levels to this game, and he proved it. He was just calmer. He was patient. He was just like, okay, this dude he's trying to do too much. I'm just going to wait for my opening, and when I see it, I'm going to take it. And he did that. He did that in the first round with beautiful combinations, and then he did it in the second round straight out of the gate. taking the back and then sinking in that choke, man. It was a flawless performance, I think, for Pantoja. But going forward, like you guys said, I am very interested to see what happens with Kaya Sakura going forward, because he's an exciting fighter, man, and he can make some things happen. He's very dangerous.
For sure. He's got a good look. He's got some swag. I like that guy. His stock didn't drop much in the loss. But Pantoja now has defended the title 3 times. And the problem with this division is we had guys like Amir Albazi and Tatsuo Taira and even Muhammad, right? Mokaev.
Yeah.
And in 2024, 2 of them have taken L's. One of them's taken a trip to Brave Fighting Championship. And so, now what for Pantoja? Nolan, any thoughts? I guess, do we start doing the rematches, or do you have anything outside the box, like a Khalil Roundtree equivalent in the flyweight division that maybe we could introduce?
No, I mean, I think really looking at it, you pretty much have 3 options right now. Either the Brandeds, Royval or Moreno, and then Kai Kara France. It's again, man. I think it's almost foreign to us at this point to have a champion that's consecutively defending their title. Right, in 2024, we see so much turnover. So Pantoja's starting to build that intrigue factor a little bit, and if it means that he has to fight a guy, one of those guys again, then so be it. But like you said, I think, honestly, the Mokaev fight, I don't know if they could ever rebuild their relationship, but in terms of realistic options, I don't know if, obviously, it probably wouldn't happen next, but there's still a question mark there. I mean, the guy was not, I understand he wasn't the most exciting, and maybe there were some issues with him behind the scenes, but in terms of who could be the best in the world or who could be Pantoja, I think that's probably the most intriguing fight of those, at least to me, just because we haven't seen it multiple times. So who knows? I think realistically it will probably be a rematch with one of the other 3 I named, but I don't know. Maybe we'll have somebody kind of bust out the outside, and 2 fights from now he'll finally get a new opponent.
And those of you in the chat who might be throwing DJ's name out there, yes, the call out was nice by Alexandre Pantoja, right? But we did hear a sonic boom from the Northwest, Matt. Mighty's not interested. He's fucking rich, man.
I don't blame him, man, especially when he said he turned down $2 million to keep fighting. I mean, listen, the UFC is definitely not going to pay that, right? If they did, or if they were interested in making that fight, yeah, I mean, that'd be a great negotiation, starting point. Be like, look, I turned down $2 million, so you're gonna have to come out some money if you want me back. But I mean, if DJ stays retired, I don't blame him. I mean, the guy's already done enough to be considered the GOAT across the board for anybody that's been watching MMA longer than 5 years. So his legacy is solidified, right? What does he really gain by coming back?
And he said when he retired, he actually took a whole year to think this over, to make sure that he wasn't just being emotional and overreacting. Seems like he put some good thought on it. He leaves on on a win. So yeah, I mean, he looks pretty secure when he says it. So, Nolan's giving us some names, goes, what's next for Pantoja? We know it's on DJ. What would you do with Asakura, goes, after some, well-deserved time off, but what would you do?
So I feel like he's exciting. I want to see him get right back in there. And if you look at some of the names out there, one that I can't get away from is I just couldn't imagine what a fight with him and Brandon Moreno would probably look like. I think that would just be really exciting, a lot of fun. But they do, at some point, the UFC, hopefully in 2025, it's Japan. Now they've got some pretty decent fighters. I think it'd be fun to do some type of fight there and have those guys be featured. But a Brandon Moreno fight for me would be really, really exciting. And look, hasn't Brandon Moreno earned the right to fight somebody else, right? Somebody new. I think he's kind of earned that too as well.
Yeah, and Dana was asked about that, going to Japan and, the relationship with Rizin, because this is a fighter who came over from Rizin straight into a title shot. And honestly, before his tampon fell out, he kind of gave some decent answers. And one of them was yeah, I would be interested in working with Rizin again. He didn't really solidify it or anything, but he did acknowledge it and say yes. But then the man was moody when it came to some other stuff. So we really couldn't expand on it. But I hope so. I certainly hope so, because Japan has provided some great fighters, in Pride, in the UFC, and in other organizations. And I love Horiguchi. You guys know, how I feel about him. Returning to flyweight, Demetrius returning to flyweight, Henry Cejudo returning to flyweight. I felt like, man, this is the time, because it's a shallow division. Goes, you want to jump in?
Yeah, I was just gonna say, I think the issue here is when you get somebody and you give them an immediate title match, you can't just like drop him back down to like 8 or 9, right? Once you're in the fire, you're there. So you got to give him someone high level. And the good thing is in the fight, at least he was fun enough and competitive enough where you feel like maybe 1 fight, 2 fights, you wouldn't mind watching him fight Pantoja again, right? Some of the names that we've brought up already were just kind of like, I guess. I think if this kid can continue to improve, you got thrown in the fire. You got to hang out there. Like, don't drop more than like 5. You have to fight monster after monster. That's just what happened. You didn't gradually make it up to a title shot. You were thrown in there. Now you got to sit in that fire. So whoever they give him better be a really good fighter.
Good point. I'm glad that we're celebrating both fighters. It was a great main event, even though it ended quicker than we wanted, but still they both went out there and threw some fire out there, and Asakura went for it. He just came up short against what's slowly becoming an all-time great there. Guys, do you have a quick Mount Rushmore of flyweights? Anybody? That's kind of what I wanted to, but we're running back on a little short on time. A lot of people are saying DJ Pantoja, but who would be the other two? Nolan, you got one?
I have to go title runs, and then Henry Cejudo too. I mean, would probably be the other one, but there's a number of different ways that you could go, but that would be mine.
You kind of were a little bumpy there, choppy. So was it Cejudo, DJ, Pantoja, and
who? Moreno.
Okay, Matt, you got one?
I would probably say Figueiredo over Cejudo, just because Cejudo had the runs in 2 divisions. So I would probably say that.
Goes?
I'd go DJ, Pantoja, and then I think I'd have Cejudo and Figgy.
Figgy over Marino. Marino won the showdown there.
Yeah, but that's going to be constantly changing as some of these guys are still fighting.
Yeah, all right. Guys, let's move over to the co-main event. Some great action took place there. Shavkat Rakhmonov secured a future title shot, one that was already his. So respect to him for fighting Ian Machado Garry when it was really supposed to be Bilal Muhammad at UFC 310, right? So he secures a future title shot against Bilal Muhammad after defeating Ian Machado Garry. Were y'all impressed? Hopefully no one gets too insulted that Shavkat didn't finish a fight for the first time in his pro career. Let's hear the reactions from the crew. Matt Wells, go react.
Fantastic fight, right? You can really tell why both of these guys were undefeated coming into this fight. They deserved, all of the hype coming in and coming out of this fight. I mean, it was just a classic, like, I don't know how to actually describe it, but I mean, you were looking at 2 future champions of this division, right? Guys that are going to be at the top of the division for a very, very long time. And you're really coming out of this fight, you really didn't feel like either guy lost a step or necessarily really gained a huge step over the other guy either. But I will say you have to kind of look at this fight a little bit differently now if what Daniel Cormier revealed ended up being the case, right? Because he said that Shavkat fought with a torn ligament, and that really affected the fight, right? Obviously, if you're coming into a fight that injured, that's going to definitely affect your performance in some way, shape, or form, right? But I mean, taking the fight at face value for what it was fantastic. I mean, you got to give Garry credit, for getting that choke sunk in and really giving everybody a good scare, late in the fight, right? But all in all, like, you can tell that these guys were familiar with each other. Like, you could tell early in the fight that, hey, I'm familiar with your movements. Like, we've trained together. We know what we're kind of looking for. But I was thoroughly entertained for all 25 minutes. And I mean, you couldn't really ask for much more outside of a finish, which we nearly got from Garry.
Matt, to clarify, I didn't know about what DC said. Are we talking knee, ankle, hand? Where was the ligament injury? Did he allude to
I
that?
actually didn't see which ligament he said, but
it was MCL.
MCL. Yeah, there you go. So
Yeah.
that's obviously a big thing, right? In your knee,
Yeah.
that's going to affect your movement. That's going to affect your ability to engage and get takedowns, things like that, push off in your striking. That affects a lot, man. But it was hard to tell that he was injured because it was just that good of a fight.
In the chat, Harsh Truth 711 says, no disrespect, but that was not a big win for Shavkat. The guy literally just clinches you along the fence to a decision. or until he tires you and forces you to make a mistake. I mean, harsh truth. Didn't I just point out that was the first time he went to a decision? So he doesn't do that often. That's not what the guy does. And finding out that he had an injury, maybe that might take some of your harsh truth off your comment. But Nolan, what were your thoughts? What was your reactions to this fight? I think both guys' stock moved up again, like in the main event.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think we were spoiled with that one. It's not very often that we kind of get a fight that almost it's about as close to a title level fight as you can get. Like two guys that probably in other circumstances the UFC would not have booked this fight, right? Like the guys' records, the promotability. They were guys that were building, contenders that had built to a point that they were close to a title fight. So just a really good matchup. We lucked into it a little bit, unfortunately for Bilal, that he had his injury. But for me, I honestly feel like I learned, Shavkat kind of solidified what I knew about him, but I feel like I learned a lot about Ian Garry. I mean, the takedown defense, the fact that he almost submitted him there at the end, like my brain would have just exploded if that happened. So he answered a lot of questions about his grappling. Good for him. I think his attitude afterwards, I know everybody kind of had the opinion on it, but he's certainly not crushed by the defeat. And I think people are excited to see him fight again.
Goes your reaction to the fight, and then I want to know something from you. Was that the best result for the UFC? In the back, they're always hoping for a certain way. I'm not saying anything about fight fixing. I'm just saying, obviously, the company business can go in a certain way if certain fighters have success.
Well, I mean, first off, the fight itself, to me, that was more chess than checkers, right? Every fight's different, and I thought we played checkers a lot that night. It was a lot of fun. But that one was chess, and I get it. Former teammates, they're probably going to do that. We've seen that a couple times. I obviously am impressed by Shavkat and what he's been able to do, but I was equally impressed with Ian Garry in the way some of the things that he was doing in that fight. It really didn't feel like that much of a loss for him. I feel like he can rebound from this very easily, but he showed so many improvements. And who didn't spend that last round showing off their double chin, right? Like I was Chuck Liddell at the whole time during that watch along. I mean, it was exciting, dude. So I really, really like that. I've said this often already. Like to me, the real winner that night was Bilal Muhammad, not having to face both guys. I think that's pretty impressive to not have to go through a guy like Ian Garry. I think that would have been a tough matchup as well. But did they kind of do? I would say if I were the UFC, maybe I wasn't as excited because, I mean, think about bringing in Bilal Muhammad into the cage and having Ian Garry across from him. The look that they're going to give each other, the smack talk is going to be way different. It's just a kind of this respect that we have for Shavkat. He's a quiet guy, so probably didn't work out in the UFC's favor in those regards. But look, at the end of the day, if that's the matchup you're left with, that it's still going to be pretty interesting. And I think in the conversations that we've had of how we think that fight's going to play out, we've had some back and forth there too. So I think it'll be a good fight, but I don't think it was the best result for the UFC.
Muhammad noise and Garry noise would have been good right there at that moment. Jesus M in the chat says dominant performance by Shavkat. And Baby Sharp MMA alludes to the torn ligament that DC had mentioned that Matt Wells brought up earlier. Keyshawn Wilson, though, however, says Shavkat lost, shaking his head. He says he was in the building. Robbery. I don't think anyone agrees with that, Keyshawn, but I think we're all giving enough love to Machado Garry to know his stock didn't drop much. Nolan, you're kind of giggling. You nothing like that.
No, I appreciated
I
appreciated your subtle shade on that one.
Look, if that was a robbery, then Volkov must have been Ocean's 11 or something, right? Like I don't see that at all.
We'll get to that. We'll get to that. What's next for Garry, Nolan? Machado.
It's tough, man. Yeah. I mean, the good thing about that division is that there's always, there's a good amount of names, and there's a lot of contenders that aren't really booked, right? You got Sean Brady, you have Kamaru Usman if he fights a welterweight again, you got Jack Della Maddalena. So I don't know, man. I think maybe taking some time off, just kind of resetting a little bit, processing a loss, but I guess we got to see who's there. I know that the Brady fight was one that was kind of talked about seemingly behind the scenes a little bit for that Tampa card. So maybe the UFC would circle back there.
Yeah, I like that. All right. Steve Williams, shout out to him in the chat. The chat accompanies the show. If you have a great comment or question, it increases the chances that I will get to it. throwing shade, being funny once in a while. I'm in the mood, but come on, guys. The better the conversation we have, the better quality show we deliver. All right, big shout out to S&C Davern. He says, "Hi boys, well impressed with Ian Garry. More impressed with this defeat than any of his victories." It's funny you say that because I was thinking the same thing. He, like I say, his stock went up. And going back one topic, because I didn't get to some of these comments, Joseph Boza says that was probably the easiest Pantoja defense ever. I think he's getting bored as champion. Steve Williams agrees and says he's a level above every other flyweight. Mokayev has a fight with Brave. That's right. It's coming up here. And if he wins this month, he will be brought back. We'll see. I heard he was difficult to deal with because he was 10-0 overall and 6-0 in the UFC. Imagine the UFC letting go of a talent like that. Something must have been happening in the background. All right, great stuff there with the main event. Let's talk about the rest of this fight card. Some really popular names competed this past Saturday night. Let's discuss some of those other results, starting with the feature fight that pitted Cyril Gane and Alexander Volkov. And I'm going to cut straight to the chase. You're talking about Ocean's 11 type of robbery. Is that what happened here? Did Volkov get robbed? How did you score it?
I thought it was pretty brutal. Last night, George and Nolan and I sat down. We watched it again because we thought, all right, are we tripping? Like, Nolan was there. George and I are doing a watch along. Sometimes you miss things. I'll say this much: I thought round one was very, very close. I don't hate you if you turned in Volkov, but I think Gane made sense. But the last two rounds, and especially round two, right? That's the one that's disputed the most on the scorecards. We all kind of looked at each other like, what is going on? This, to me, was a very clear Volkov round. Yeah, he got burned pretty bad. The fact that Cyril Gane just took off after the announcement, I think that says a lot there too. So not a good look for what happened. And hopefully the UFC does something good for Volkov, because that is brutal, man. That ruins the streak. It hurts a lot.
Yeah, they even talked about his coach having a shocked look. Fernand Lopez as well. Everybody was shocked. And yes, like Ghost says, we did watch it over again. You could call round one for Volkov, because in that round, I remember Gane through a knee, and then he also had that submission attempt at the end. And if you remember, Volkov kind of gave a clear thumbs up, like he wasn't really threatened by that choke. Of course, Joe Rogan's head wants to explode every time there is a submission, and he says it's on the verge of there being, a tap. And that wasn't the case, but that might have been what sold it. But yeah, round two is the one, because round one was all 10-9 for the judges for Gane. And then the last round was all 10-9s for Volkov. So we watched the whole fight. But yeah, we just looked at each other and said, that's 10-9 for Volkov. Nolan, what do you think happened here? Do we call this a robbery? We don't throw that around too often here.
It's close if it's not one. Just because, again, like we said, we broke it down last night. Round two is the one that is up for debate here, according to the judges. I'm pretty open. Like, I think there, with the scoring criteria right now, there's a lot of rounds I can look at and I say that was a close round. I think fighter A edged it, but I could see if you interpreted things and you put weight into certain things more than I did, that it could go to fighter B. So the only round that I felt that way was round one. And that was a Gane round on all three judges' scorecards. So to me, that's, it was Volkov's fight. I think we can all agree on that. I don't know if it was a robbery, but it certainly was. It should have been clear cut, So I guess it kind of is. I guess I would lean towards the robbery.
How'd you score it, Matt Wells?
Yeah, I had it for Volkov, but I mean, the moment I heard Adelaide Bird's scorecard read, I was like, oh, here we go. Here we go. But yeah, I mean, I don't know if it was worth like the big uproar that Dana, had. I don't know if you guys have seen the clips that came out from the UFC where Dana, said basically Volkov got effed right outside of the octagon there. But I mean, sure, I think it was the wrong decision, but it was still a close fight. The fact that Gane broke his toes like on the very first kick he threw is crazy, and still went, the whole 15 minutes and was able to still be competitive and actually show off more of his ground game. I think that was kind of interesting. But yeah, end of the day, Volkov should have won that fight.
Yeah,
it's a bummer for him too, because I feel like he he's always gotten to this point and lost, right? So I think that's part of it
Yeah.
too for people, is like seeing this guy continue to be at the top and, you know, get eliminated by the title, you know, the guys that are going to fight for the title. So unfortunate situation for him too. Must sting.
I think he got screwed, honestly. That would have been 5 in a row. And remember, if Jones bows out, Volkov's in for a title shot. This was a very costly. Dana White telling him he got screwed. Hopefully he tell him, I'm going to pay you your win bonus. He's done it in the past. Hopefully he told him something like that. And yeah, I just completely disagree with that decision. What is next for Gon? I guess he gets the title shot, guys. Let's say they do Aspinall versus Jones. Matt, would you put Gon against someone else, or just have him wait out the winner, which would be awkward if Jones won and wanted to continue?
Yeah, it's going to be awkward because of that whole situation. Who knows if we even get Jones and Aspinall? But I think Gon is going to be out for a little while, healing up those toes. Did you guys see the X-rays? We have the article up on MMA Junkie right now. I mean, that's 3 toes just cracked like that is crazy. So he's probably going to be on the sideline for a little bit, and hopefully the title picture plays out during that time. But I mean, we probably won't see Jones back until what, International Fight Week, maybe, if we're lucky. So who knows? Who knows what's going to happen?
Heal up both the big fellas, then, I guess, is the best thing we can say. Because yeah, next for Volkov, even that gets confusing. He just beat Pavlovich. He just won 4 in a row. He thought he won a 5th. What could happen next for him? I think first we need to see what Jones decides, and then we'll figure out what's next there. How about Movsar Evloev and Aljamain Sterling? Notice I'm skipping 2 fights on the pay-per-view, but this fight carried a lot of weight. Where does Evloev stand now? He defeated Sterling, and we're not claiming any robberies here. It was pretty clean, the win.
Yeah, I mean, look, you can't deny a guy that doesn't stop winning, right? That's what he does. The problem is, you know, the UFC, I think maybe they've made his road a little bit tougher, and I get that, but he doesn't stop winning. And it's a tough situation because it's tough for the fans to get behind you if you're not getting your finishes, if the organization goes out of their way to kind of say that's what they're looking for. Things are always going to be tough for him, but I thought it was a really good, you know, you talked about why we're not talking about the other 2 fights, right, on the main card. It's because we felt like this fight deserved to be on the main card. And I thought the fight that they brought was main card worthy. It was fun. Yes, there was a lot of grappling, but it was back and forth, man. There was high level wrestling, high level grappling in that fight. And so it was kind of a shame that it got buried like that. But Movsar Evloev, like, I thought that was a great Aljamain Sterling that showed up. I thought he gave him hell. I thought both guys looked really good, but Evloev is a beast, man. I think that dude deserves something big.
And as we know in the past, if you sit around too long, it could backfire. I think next is obviously Topuria versus Volkanovski. When 312 was announced, which we'll get to later on, and I didn't hear Volkanovski's name, that's the only time I thought, you know, maybe an Evloev or a Lopez might be able to sneak in, because I would have thought that would have been a nice one. Although that's probably more from Topuria's side, why that's not going down. But we have Lopez, Evloev, Matt Wells. What'd you think of his win, and where does he stand? He obviously has to take another fight. Who would you give him?
Man, I don't think he should have to take another fight, to be honest with you. The way like that fight unfolded, I mean, he really proved that he's one of the best in the world, right? That fight was so much fun to watch. I mean, if I told you it's going to be 15 minutes of grappling, you'd probably be like, "Man, really?" But that fight was super entertaining, man. And it just showed like high level scrambles, like just throughout, man. It was a fun fight. I don't know what you do with him next, because it, like you said, like there's kind of like that unclear, like it's a little murky at the top, right? You could go a lot of different ways, but I think he's done enough. Undefeated. Like, what more does he have to do?
Well, I ask only because Lopez is widely liked, and he came in as a substitute or an alternate in the last title fight, the one that had Topuria versus Holloway. But at the same time, I don't think anyone wants to see Lopez versus Evloev, because you're going to take one of the guys out, and when Evloev isn't challenged in the grappling realm, it's because he's basically taking you down for 15 minutes.
I'll put it to you like this. So I agree that Lopez should be next as well because of that backup role, because I've said if you're going to put a guy in a backup role, why is he not the next challenger, right? I've said that.
Mm-hmm.
I've been pretty firm in that. So he should be next. But I like the fact that, you know, you have another guy that's right there waiting in the wings, because whoever wins that next fight should not be getting an immediate rematch. So there's your next challenger right there, ready to go.
Mm-hmm. Nolan, do you want to weigh in? This is a big fight for the featherweights, and there are some possibilities there in the different directions they can go. Can't hear you, Nolan.
I'll just say again that it should have been on the main card, you know, and it's kind of unfortunate. I think when Dana was asked about this at the presser, like many of the other questions, he was very annoyed, so he didn't really get an answer as to like what the UFC's weight into this fight was and this result. But just a tremendous fight, super high level, and it was just a treat to watch. I hope, you know, I think even Aljamain Sterling, you know, there were some questions answered about him at featherweight. So just excited to see what both these guys do.
If the card sucks, but the fights turn out great, Dana can't wait to flex. Hey, leave the matchmaking to us. You guys shit on the card. We're gonna do a video about what you guys said. You know, let us do our gig. And then when you bring it up to him, hey man, those fights kind of didn't. Hey, you set me up. You set me up. What you doing over there? You know, it's like you can't win. And all we're doing is our jobs. You know, like Chrome Gracie just didn't look good, but he didn't look good in his last couple fights. This fight should have been spotlighted there, man. Evlo Evans Sterling, fist bump to both of you guys. You guys really, really did great here. All right. Who Choi's potential. I thought he was another guy that impressed. Came out of nowhere. You know, he's kind of not been active as much, but what were your thoughts there, Goes?
Well, I think a lot of us expected a war, and he's very capable of doing that. We've seen that in previous fights, but he was more cerebral in this one. You know, I like this version of him. He's a scary man, dude. I kind of want to see him turn it around and get right back in there, because I felt like the fans embraced him. I thought he looked amazing in the fight, and really, you match him up with just about anybody. I think he's going to give us a fun, exciting fight. But I hope he kind of sticks to how he fought on Saturday night, because that would be a very tough
He looked good
to defeat. Yeah.
Fast, powerful, accurate, everything. And then of course some of the unfortunate results for guys like Chris Weidman, Clay Guida, Anthony Smith. Matt, is that it for them? Dana White wants them to retire. He can't force guys to retire, but he's really leaning into all three of them for different reasons.
It's tough. But I mean, I kind of don't disagree, right? I think the only one I would kind of say maybe you give a little bit more leash to would be Anthony Smith, just because of the way he came into this fight. Like, he just came into this fight like a broken person, as they're saying in the comments here. Like, he was way too emotional. I mean, the commentary was picking up on it as well. It just seemed like he just wanted to be in there to feel something other than the pain of his good friend and coach dying. And I mean, he literally did that in the fight, putting his hand down and just letting Dominic Reyes punch him in the face. Like, it was just, it wasn't a guy that was focused on winning. And I mean, let's be honest, he even said it himself. He said, I don't give a fuck about winning. Like, I'm in here just to punch something. And that's just not a good recipe for success in any measure at this level of fighting. So I think if he takes some time away to really reassess things, maybe he comes back and continues his career. But the other guys, Clay Guida, I mean, look, he's already in the Hall of Fame. I think it's his time. Chris Weidman, I'm on the same boat as well. I mean, it's kind of one of my hot takes, but I've never really been high on Chris Weidman as a super high level guy. I think he got really lucky in a lot of ways, but you got to give him credit for going out there and making stuff happen. But I think his time has come and gone a while ago, to be honest.
All right, let's move on. There's a lot to talk about here. That card had a lot of talent, and we wanted to highlight some of it. And if we have time, we'll do so at the end. But we got to move on, because in 2025, some pay-per-views have been announced. They're pretty sweet what they threw out there. The UFC said the main event and co-main event for UFC 311 on January 18th would be Islam Makhachev defending against Arman Sarukian. And in the co-main event, it'll be Merab Dvalishvili against Umar Nurmagomedov. And then on February 9th, UFC 312, they already told us what's going down there. Dricus du Plessis defends against Sean Strickland. And in the co-main event, Zhang Weili defends against Tatiana Suarez. So I'm going to be Mick Maynard or Sean Shelby and play matchmaker. Guys, what's the better fight card? 311 or 312 if we pit them against each other? Goes. What do you like? What are you more
Dude,
excited about?
it is absolutely neck and neck. I really like if you look at them both, obviously we have 2 rematches, right? You have one on each one. So then you drop down one. And I'll be honest with you, that Tatiana Suarez fight with Zhang Weili, I just feel like she's probably one of the last people that can really push Zhang Weili everywhere in that fight. The improvements that Tatiana Suarez has shown have been pretty remarkable. So I'm kind of more intrigued about that fight. So I'm going to lean a little bit slightly more that way, but it is absolutely neck and neck.
Nolan?
They're all great fights. No complaints on the booking here, but I think, to be honest, I think this is kind of easy. I think UFC 311 is just super intriguing to me. I think that the difference in the rematches is we just saw Dricus and Sean fight less than a year ago as of now. And the Arman Islam fight is like a totally different fight. These two guys have really evolved. They've really become elite fighters. And sure, maybe stylistically, a Strickland versus Duplessis fight is going to turn into a banger. But I honestly don't know that the main event and co-main event at 311, like I don't know how it's going to play out. I think they're both great fights. Obviously the co-main event has a little bit of heat behind it. I'm a huge fan of that. Maybe I'm a little biased because that card in general is very tremendous as well. It's very deep, but as much as I like all 4 of these fights, the Suarez Zhang Weili fight is also fantastic. I just think that 1-2 punch of kicking off the year with the lightweight and bantamweight title fights, I'm hooked.
All right, Matt, you're going to make one of these two the dissenting judge because Goes likes 312. Nolan likes 311. What do you like?
Man, I like Goes' point for 312, right? I mean, I've been banging the Tatiana Suarez drum since, her Ultimate Fighter win. I'm really intrigued, right? I mean, this is somebody that would have been a champion a long time ago, I think, if she didn't have constant injuries keeping her on the sidelines, right? So I'm intrigued to see if she can actually finally get it done. But your main event, co-main event at 311 is just better, simply. I mean, comparatively. I mean, it's I don't think Sean Strickland should have gotten the rematch. Listen, we got 2 great fights. We got the pound for pound #1 fighter in Islam Makhachev, right? Or #2, depending on who you ask. And then that co-main event with Merab and Umar is just fantastic. That's going to be a chaotic fight for however long it lasts. If it does, I mean, listen, they're all great fights, like Nolan said. But yeah, 311.
Wow, this is like bachelor drama. I mean, Matt almost got on a knee and proposed the Goes, and then at the end he said, "But I can't do it. Nolan's my true love." So he sides with Nolan here.
Yep.
Good stuff there. All right. It's hey, by the way, the rest of 3-1 is pretty insane. Moicano versus Dariush, and there was another sick fight that got signed there. I want to get to the super chat by Lazy Bed. Segura scored it for Gon. All right, so he's running a little bit behind, but it's funny because he said Danny be tripping. It's true, folks. MMA Decisions had everyone scoring it for Gon. The only outlet that didn't was Junkie, and Danny Segura was our play-by-play guy. And he would be smiling at this because he loves some of this. So great eye, Lazy Bed, by saying that, and that's why I go back in time to address that. Also, I want to give some shout out to Masters of the Universe, who was saying, I want to see you guys deck out your sets a little bit. So I got myself a little tree there. Yeah. And Goes has some green and red going on with his.
He said you were the only one that did it. I'm not Freddy Krueger. Like this Christmas shit back here, no?
Well, but those are also Mexican colors. So maybe he thought, September 16th. Or you're feeling the Irish. It's got some Irish colors too, because I'm
Machado feeling Garry. Attacked today. I felt like Matt Wells was on my side, and it was one of those WWE things where we both have our arms up. They turn out,
lifted your arm, and then he cold slide.
I was on Amazon. I was buying his gift, and then he took Nolan's side. It's like,
Goes, what color? What shade of green is that?
An ugly.
Is it Celtic green?
A very ugly shade of green. It was Puke, I think was the name of it. I don't know.
Hey guys, it falls on us because again, Dana wasn't in the mood, but was Duplessis versus Strickland the right call? Remember, everybody was really stoked over Khamzat Chimaev and his performance not too long ago, and how he might leap over Strickland, and Strickland better play ball because he's saying he wanted it to be in the USA. Hey, you never know, they might go to Hamza, but they didn't. Nolan, was it the right call though to stick with the rematch versus the fresh matchup?
I mean, I was more intrigued by the Hamzat fight. I'm not a fan of running fights back so quickly. On the other hand, they did seem to lead Strickland down a path of like, you've got the next shot. So it was kind of a weird scenario. I understand why they went with Sean to a certain degree, but then there's also a lot of questions as to, is it a travel issue with Hamzat? Is it, was he not ready for some reason? I think we've heard conflicting things about, he's fought in the States, he fought in Florida. He's said in the past he doesn't have an issue. I think Dana said it, but we've only seen him, I believe, that one time outside. So I don't know, man. I mean. Hopefully it's something that can get rectified, and we see that fight right on the other side of this. Big part of this too that people forget about is them. They have a schedule. They have all these deals that they have signed with different locations that require certain amounts of title fights or whatever. So that could be part of it too. Is there's a huge element when it comes to matchmaking that not always the best fight is going to be made because they need to fill these slots. So that could be that's a major factor in a lot of these that I think we overlook at times as well.
Yeah, I would agree. All right. Look, I think we're all in agreement over these matchups. I mean, maybe Verna Jandarova is the only one I can think of that might have got screwed here, but Suarez has been undefeated. She's had so many setbacks, but she's just flat out never lost. So her versus Zhang Weili is probably the right matchup there. But I do feel for Verna because she has kind of been on a roll and whatever. I'm over it. Hey, let's move on to some stuff that's happening, which some people like, some don't. We're in the fight business is a quote we hear often from Dana White when he's asked about some of these altercations that take place around the octagon, outside the octagon, at the PI or whatever. Hey, they click. I'm not going to lie. And I'm not even saying I'm not into it a little bit, but some stuff, are we getting close to having some problems? Dennis Bazooka punched a fan, Matt Wells, as him and Dvalishvili, it looks like they were leaving after Aljamain Sterling's fight. Those are teammates of his. And Dvalishvili was being held back by UFC or Team Mobile Security, but Bazooka got free and he threw some hands at, I'm going to call a fan because he was on that side of the fence where people pay for tickets, I guess. But I'm also hearing he might have ties to a team. Who knows? What are your thoughts on this one in particular and some of the other stuff that went down on Fight Week?
I was thoroughly disgusted with this, to be honest with you, to put it bluntly, right? Because you have to think if this were any other sport and an athlete there in an official capacity, especially punched a fan, and like you said, we're going to refer to this person as a fan for now because we don't know how deep these ties go or whatever have you. I mean, there's pictures of this man with Armin's team and Khabib's team and Islam's team rather on his social media, but we're going to call him a fan. But in any other sport, if an athlete punches a fan, it would be the biggest story for months. It would be headline news across the board on every sports talk show, whatever have you. But here it literally gets swept under the rug. And I think the UFC loves that, right? They almost welcome that aspect of what's happening. It's ugly. You shouldn't expect an athlete to get physical with the fan. I mean, you have to have better control of your temper. If somebody grabs you, as the video shows, right? Fighters get grabbed all the time when they're walking out, like when they're getting ready for a fight. Fans will get a little bit too, a little bit too excited, and they try to grab them, or they try to steal their hats, whatever have you. But they just got to keep it pushing, man. You can't turn around and react to these people that are doing the most. So yes, this person does have a little bit of, or actually a lot of the responsibility for grabbing Merab, because that was captured on video as well. But Merab has got to react better, man. You just pull your arm away and just keep it pushing. Why are you turning and giving this person attention? Right? I don't understand that. And then you have security creating this whole scene, and then Dennis Bazooka going over there and punching the guy. Are you serious? Are you serious? Like, you have your corner gear still in your other arm and you go over there and punch this dude. why even react to this? It doesn't make any sense. Even if it is somebody from Islam's team or from Umar's team, ignore it and keep it pushing. Like, what are we doing here, guys? It doesn't make any sense to me. The fact that this isn't a bigger story is crazy to me as well. The fact that Dana White just essentially brushed it off is like, this is the fight business. Like, you should be on the microphone in that post-fight press conference saying we absolutely are against this. No, none of our guys should be swinging on people in the stands. As a fan, you shouldn't expect to get swung on when you're in the audience. Like, it's madness how the reaction to this is just like, oh, it's a fight game. It is what it is. Like, it's I don't get it, man. I don't get it. Yes, it's a fight game. Yes, it's different than any other sport, but come on, guys. Why are athletes getting physical with people in the stands? It does not make any sense to me.
Matt, how would you penalize a fighter that did what Dennis Bazooka did, well, for example?
Yeah, that's another thing, right? Dana kind of hinted at it at the post-fight press conference. He said it's going to cost him a lot of money. What does that mean? Because the UFC does not announce fines. They never say they're going to fine the guys for things like this. We're talking about a UFC champion here too. And he's getting into these altercations with fans. Again, Dennis Bazooka actually threw punches at this guy. No announcement of a fine, suspension, whatever have you, no repercussions whatsoever. It's just kind of like, we're going to slightly acknowledge that it happened, and hopefully the story goes away next week when we have another fight card at the Apex or wherever have you. So it's crazy to me that this stuff is just like swept under the rug every single time, man. There's got to be repercussions for this kind of stuff. Otherwise, you're inviting it. And that's why I said a second ago, it's like they almost want this stuff to happen. Like, we'll talk about the other incidents, like with Nate Diaz showing up, throwing water bottles and stuff like that. When you don't hold these guys accountable, they're going to keep doing it. They're going to think it's okay to do because you're not doing anything to prevent them from doing it in the future.
Nolan, should the commissions get involved if the UFC is not going to tax them?
Well, I mean, that's what I was thinking here too, to a certain degree. I mean, the UFC doesn't have the incentive sometimes because they can throw, I mean, not with the fans as much, but like obviously when the fighters are scrapping and stuff, they can throw, water bottle toss videos or Sean Strickland jumping over the rows. It plays right into the promotion. So there is an element of this where, a commission gives Merab a license and gives Dennis Bazooka a license. I believe they can suspend them from competition as well. I don't know. Again, I think in the past, when it comes to fines and stuff, there's no monetary value attached to Merab, what he did the other night, or Bazooka. I believe there was an issue a few years ago where a commissioner actually fined the fighter whose corner did something. So that at the time was kind of debated as to whether that was the right thing or not. And I think that was actually for violating a COVID protocol. So that was a whole different other thing. But to me, yeah, I'm interested to see like if that's something that comes up. I mean, now we have a precedent, right, where Arman Sarukian punched a fan. He was suspended for 6 months, and I believe, and had to do a video or something. I don't remember if there was a fine associated, but it's something that I don't know if what Merab did would warrant any sort of that, but I think what Bazooka did, throwing punches, I mean, that's the same exact thing Arman did. So to me, I wouldn't be shocked to see it come up. I'm sure that the commission's at least aware of it, but we'll see. I believe they have a meeting in two weeks, 2 weeks from tomorrow. So I guess we'll keep an eye on that agenda or the January one, because I believe that they can suspend his license. Like, it doesn't have to be just the corner license. Like, I think they can put a pause on everything they do, and that would carry over to all the commissions.
I remember how disgusted Dana was at the press conference for UFC 178 when DC and Jones, these are two fighters going at each other, but because it spilled into the public, he just talked about how that was just, it can't happen in the organization, it can't happen with the fans. But yeah, this one's, hey, it's the fight business. I don't like that. Now, there have been some interactions between fighters like Makhachev's team and Nate Diaz and Pereira versus Hill at the PI. Those didn't involve fans. Was a little bit of you, ooh, this is good, looking at the different angles of these fisticuffs, or do those turn you off?
I mean, yeah, I'm not gonna lie. I'm watching it when those happen. It's the ones that happen, where there's civilians. That's just the line that you can't cross, and it's always shocked me that the UFC just doesn't really draw a line. And if there's no line, people are just gonna keep walking over and over. It's like when you show up to work 10 minutes late, what happens? Nobody says anything. What do you do the next day? 11, then 12, right? Why wait until something really bad happens to have to actually say something? I think you have to get ahead of it. And this is about as bad as you get, right? When you're striking people in the audience, when there's fights in the audience, one day they're going to miss, or somebody's going to fall, an older person's going to fall down the stairs or something. Why do we have to wait for that? That part I don't get. It is the fight game, and I get that it is more edgy, but that should happen in the cage, not in the stands.
We got to move on in just a second, but just to put a little bow on this topic, Matt, any thoughts on Hill versus Pajeda? Did you get a kick out of it? You know, some of this obviously helps with planning the rematch. You know, Hill wants to fight Prochazka, but also secure that there ain't no one else that's going to intercept them after we imagine Pajeda and Ankalaev do their business. So do you like a little bit of what he did? You know, he nothing actually happened and they didn't touch each other, but there was a moment.
Yeah, it's that interaction was pretty interesting, right? Because you have in two different ways, you have both guys that were really about that life, right? I mean, Jamal Hill walking up on him, right? That's saying, hey, we're not on Twitter now, getting in his face and saying, what's up? And then, you know, on the other side, you got Alex, who literally just went over to the gloves and said, let's go. And Jamal didn't do a thing about it. He said, I'm good. He said, I'm good, not for free. So it was like, okay, you know, keeping it real goes wrong a little bit there for Jamal Hill. But it was a funny little interaction in a couple of different ways there for both of them. But yeah, that kind of stuff right there is okay to me because, like you said, it didn't get physical. When guys are going to run into each other at the PI or in the gyms and stuff like that, and if you get any, you know, jaw jack a little bit, that stuff's fine. That's fight promotion. They have the video of it. I'm sure it's going to be used if and when they meet again. Just like they use Connor bus throwing a dolly through a bus, right? Like that's kind of stuff the UFC loves. They eat that stuff up. But this particular interaction was kind of funny to me.
Nolan, any thoughts on this topic of, you know, the altercations there?
No, I mean, again, like Matt said, I think it was out of all the things we discussed, like a little, I was going to call it healthier, but I'm not sure that's the right word. It's, I don't know, it's a little more harmless, you know. So good fight promotion. I thought Alex Pereira, you know, asked him out on the red carpet, pretty cold response, just, you know, kind of shrugging it off. But we saw what happened, and yeah, I don't know. It'll be good. It'll be on the next promo whenever they fight again.
Kevin in the chat says Jamal just can't stop embarrassing himself. Karate Ted Toon says Hill lost face. He's now a joke. Lazy Bed said Street Rules 101. Don't press someone unless you're ready for the smoke. All right, I got to jump in here. I also disagree with some of Hill's tactics. Sometimes he does entertain me, but I thought what I saw, and I'm not trying to be Captain Saber, bro. I thought what he said was, hey, we ain't on Twitter now. Pajeda then throws him the gloves, and then Hill said, he didn't necessarily back down. What he said was, let's just throw hands. He goes, if we're going to put on gloves, we might as well get paid for that. But I think he did say, if we're going to throw hands, let's throw some hands right now. So just to save a little face there for Jamal. Is that how you guys, did you guys hear that part?
Yeah, that is what he said, but I still interpret that as him backing down, right? Because one, why would you want to fight bare knuckle when that's literally going to damage both of you guys and cost you guys potential money, stuff like that? Put on the gloves. That's what you guys do in the gym every day anyways when you're sparring. So if you want to fight the guy, put the gloves on and spar for a couple of minutes, so however long, you know, the coaches allow it to go. So to me, I saw it as backing down.
All right. Good thing Coach of the Year Plinio Cruz got in the way. Otherwise, who knows if that would have went down. And yeah, those are sour grapes. I took a picture with the guy. I told him, hey, what you've done with Pajeda is outstanding. But man, I thought my man Eric Nixick was going to take this thing down at the World MMA Awards. It was this past weekend. Whole other topic. Sorry, I just had to get it out. No more UFC pay-per-views, guys, this year. As we talked about earlier, that was it. 310, no mas. 311s in January. 312 in February. There is one fight night left in Tampa. The main event ain't too shabby in this one. We got some welterweights. What are the stakes here, goes? We already know Shavkat's next versus Bilal Muhammad. But what happens with Covington and Buckley? Who do you like? And does the winner get the winner of that other fight?
Yeah, I wouldn't be shocked if that happened, especially if it were Buckley and he looked tremendous, right? This fight, I was actually pretty surprised they put this one together. I think it's one of those fights where early on in the fight, we're just going to know in which direction it's going to go, right? You have the young buck in Buckley, and Colby Covington's kind of going more towards the end of his career. He's had some time. Can he turn things around? If he gets that takedown early, then yeah, we might be looking at a completely different fight. But if he can't do that, I think we're going to know early on in this fight what it's gonna look like. If Buckley can do something pretty exciting, I think he's a guy that a lot of people get behind. I think it's a good chance for him. Look, make no mistake about it. That division is a fun division. There are some killers in that division, so you need one after another. And I think if Buckley wins, I think that would be pretty exciting down the road.
Are you surprised, Matt, that Covington stepped up? Buckley's been on a roll, and Covington seems to be kind of choosy with who he mixes it up with, especially on late notice.
I mean, it's about time Colby Covington signed up for a fight. But I mean, I'm not excited to. I mean, I am excited to see what he kind of looks like in a way, because that fight against Leon, he did not look good at all. He looked slow. He looked uncomfortable. And Joaquin Buckley's going to bring a different level of pressure than what Leon Edwards brings too. Leon's more calculated with his approach, right? He's going to stalk you down and he's going to put pressure on you, but Buckley is almost borderline reckless at times with his pressure. So if that same Colby Covington shows up, man, it's going to be a quick night for him.
Nolan, your thoughts on this fight? Does Buckley get a title shot against the winner of Shavkat and Muhammad? Are these the type of stakes for the fight on Saturday?
I'm not sure. I guess it'll kind of come down to who else has big wins in the next few months. Maybe some of those contenders I mentioned, like Jack Della and Sean Brady, who I think are expected to kind of return the first couple months of the year. But tremendously important fight for opposite reasons for these guys. I think Colby, like Matt said, I mean, the narrative coming out of that pay-per-view in December last year was essentially Colby Covington did not look good. So if he goes out there and loses perhaps to a name that's a step down from what who he's competed against in the last few years, I think it will be a big blow to his interest, his momentum, kind of the public's perception of if he's able to get back to a title. And then for Buckley to go out there and win would do the opposite thing. Going out against a guy that's challenged for the title multiple times would really push him up into that conversation. I would just have to see what he's competing against when it comes to Jack Della, when it comes to Sean Brady, and what fights they might be in, and even Carlos Prats, right? The UFC tried to book him against Shavkat for this past card. So we'll have to see what happens with the rest of the welterweight division first.
Scott Christian says, I was surprised they were able to get Colby to sign the papers, not because he doesn't stand a chance, but because of the risk. And Karate Ted Toon says Colby is too small. We'll see. I agree with Matt. He didn't look that good against Edwards, but that just may have been a bad fight. And maybe he still has some gas left in the tank. He's made other fighters not look good in the past, but he's also getting up there in age and he hasn't fought as often. All right, guys, what's another highlight from this fight card in Tampa that you want to put a spotlight on before we take off? Is there something else you're liking from this fight card?
You know, if you look top to bottom, there's going to be some fun scraps, but I think Silva and Kopp is going to be interesting. I'm excited to see that one. I think those two have a lot to prove here, especially when you see how that division is shaking out.
In a division that's not very shallow, yeah, one of them could make a move here. Matt Wells, anything you like from Tampa?
Yeah, man. I am always a fan of seeing Adrian Yanez compete, and he's fighting an undefeated fighter, so that should be interesting as well. Daniel Marcos 3-0 in the UFC so far. I think that's going to be the low-key banger of the night right there.
Is that the undefeated Peruvian, Marcos? It is, huh?
Indeed it is.
And Yanez shook off those Font and Martinez losses. He reinvented himself, so we'll see how he looks. How about you, Nolan? What do you like out of the Tampa card?
Interested to see what Navajo Sterling does with his UFC career. I think he's one of the few 205 prospects that has a lot of promise. Kind of fights a lot like Israel Adesanya, his teammate, and there's no, it's intentional that he's kicking off the main card here. I think he's somebody they're trying to push. But Cub Swanson and Billy Quarantillo in the co-main event in front of fans, I've got to give shout out to those guys too, because I think that has fight of the night written all over it.
Quarantillo originally from Buffalo, New York, I think, and now he's been making Tampa his home the last 10 years. So it's kind of a home game for him. Guys, I mentioned the World MMA Awards, and since we have a few seconds here, any thoughts on that event? It did take place this past fight week, and it's big for the industry. Goes you were there. Any thoughts?
I mean, it's always a fun time, right? Like just to be around all these people and see the accomplishments that have happened. I thought there were some surprises that night. I'll say that much. But it's a fun event. I really wish that fighters and maybe more of the public got involved, because our sport, these are the good things that we get to talk about, right? And I think we should have a little bit more focus on those. So hopefully we see more fighters there. But there was some big name fighters out there on that stage.
You talking about the Nina drama where Joe Rogan upset, or another one?
Hey, that tells you a lot, right? That was pretty crazy. You brought up the coaches. I thought that was pretty interesting as well. But look, Dana White was there. Sometimes he's not. He was.
Yeah.
Pereira was there, so it was a lot of fun. And then you have your people outside of MMA that were sprinkled in that were pretty interesting. We had some fun with some of them actually.
From Yellowstone, that's right. Ian from Yellowstone portrays character Ryan. All right, Matt. Any thoughts on real quick on World MMA Awards?
Yeah, I mean, there was obviously a clear robbery when it comes to the Journalist of the Year award. The man pictured right below me was robbed by Ariel Helwani.
Let me get my
Journalist
wallet.
of the Year. So, Nolan, I'll send you a different, I guess, a fake trophy, so to speak. But I'll send you a trophy because you
Appreciate
deserve
it.
that one, sir.
Nolan
you very
was
much.
up for best journalist, and he's well deserving of that nomination. And then wanted to thank all of you that may or may not have voted for, because it's important to go out there and vote regardless, whatever you feel for. But if you did vote for MMA Junkie and Nolan King, we appreciate it. Congrats to World MMA Awards, the fighters only people, for continuing to make it happen. That was the 16th edition. I think it could be bigger, and I hope it does get bigger, but it is a fun time, and it was great to be out there. Thank you all that tuned in for the watch along on Saturday, and we'll be back in 2025 on January 18th for 311 with 2 title fights there. All right, folks, we are out of here. Some of you we may not talk to for I'm not going to say that because we'll be here next week. So I just want to wish everyone a happy holiday season. And with that, go out and be a champion. We'll talk to you soon.